You're listening to She's the Business podcast. Have you ever asked yourself the question, what is success and what does success look like for me? I'm sure that success feels like something that you kind of already know what it is because it's this word, it's this feeling, especially if you are a high achiever, just like myself, then it's probably something that you've been reaching for your whole life. Like, yes, I want to be successful and I'm going to do more things and have more things and achieve more things in order to find that success. But really, what is it? What does it mean? And is it even possible that you could be successful now without having this constant need to achieve something even more and even more and even more that still leaves you feeling not quite there yet? If any of these questions are sounding relevant for you and you'd love to understand more about how you can live into and be successful today, then stay tuned because today's episode has been made especially for you. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and over the last 25 years in marketing and business, I've helped many brands to launch, scale, and grow, with some of them becoming multi-billion-dollar companies. I'm here to inspire you to get out of your own way and create a profitable, fulfilling business while living the lifestyle you really desire, without all the hustle. So I bring you She's the Business podcast, a unique blend of strategies, tactics, mindset, health, and spirituality, literally everything you need to be the successful leader of your dream business. Made by women for women, this is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration. My very special guest today joining me on the podcast to talk all about the real way to find success in your life is the beautiful Melonie Taylor. She is the Chief Energy Officer of Virtual Angels by Success on Purpose, and she's also a success mentor for burnt out, empathetic high achievers who have been experiencing anxiety and depression. She helps them to rewire their nervous system to find abundance and joy every day. Her business, Success on Purpose, sort of came about as Melonie was asking herself, well, what is the purpose of life? While she was working in palliative care as a nurse for 18 years, supporting people to die well. And it was also a time in her life where she herself was struggling with depression, anxiety, and feeling unfulfilled. That question just kept on arising. Although she was making a difference in the lives of others, Melonie didn't know how to make a difference in her own life. And after not listening to the many signs from the universe, which included the stress, moments of burnout, daily depression, anxiety, Melonie herself was given a big lesson, a massive breakdown after a broken wrist, where she surrendered her ego to her higher self and embarked on a journey of learning how to use her high achieving self in self-love and how to become a human being instead of a human doing. And through that, finding success and abundant success in her life, in her business, where every day is a dream. Now, she has shared so much of her own story, which I know you'll find super interesting as a business owner, how she's shifted from being a nurse into a business owner and how she's managed to temper her high achieving self and all of that drive into a place where it's channeled in a really positive way and a way that she feels calm and centered and guided really by her intuition and her soul and her purpose in life. So she's got so much to share. It's a beautiful episode. Please stay tuned, especially towards the end, because she does have something special for listeners of She's a Business podcast. And I know that you'll want to find out what that is. And she shares it right near the end of the episode. So keep listening and you will discover so many things that you can start to ask yourself and actions that you can take today in order to live into your purpose and be successful and feel that success right now. So without further ado, let me play this interview for you. And I'm here now with the lovely Melonie Taylor. Melonie, thank you so much for joining me on She's Business
I'm so
podcast
grateful
today. I can't wait to have this
here
conversation
and
with you all
see what
about
comes
success.
through really this morning. It'll be beautiful.
Yes. Well, we had such a great conversation when we met. I think it was last month. And I knew that this would be a really good conversation to bring to the podcast because we're all chasing success all the time. But what does it really mean? You know, why is it so hard sometimes? And what can we do differently so that we find success easier? I think this is really where we're going to explore today, and you're the right person to have this conversation with. But before we dive into all of that, can you tell us a bit about exactly what you do in your business? Who do you serve?
All right.
And
wow.
I'd love to know a little bit about
there's two
how you got
businesses
into it
here,
as well.
but really formulate underneath the company, Success on Purpose. So number one, became a success mentor back in 2011, I would say. After a burnout, a breakdown, I was a nurse for 18 years working in palliative care, very into academia, did a postgrad at Melbourne Uni, ducks the class as I broke my wrist and, you know, it all happening throughout the year. Which I suppose I'll go back to later, but that's when I really redefined what success meant to me, because on paper I was super successful. I was ticking all the boxes, overachiever, I would say, and thankfully I feel like the burnout, the breakdown saved my life because I was really on the trajectory. My adrenals, I can see now my adrenals were burnt. They probably burnt out my whole life. I probably could have been diagnosed with all sorts of fancy names. But at the end of the day, I realised I didn't love myself. I was up there receiving a massive award going, oh, my God, I'm so successful, but am I happy? Not really. And so, yeah, that was a beautiful trajectory to realise that I didn't know thyself, didn't know what I wanted in life. I was just an object of, I think, society. And then you do this, and then you go next, and then this is next, and this is next. And so it was a beautiful opportunity. And then I was a very overgiver, I would say, overachiever, overgiver. But, you know, it's all purposeful. I found myself in Nepal after duxing the class at Melbourne Uni, went over there and did some volunteer work, taught some beautiful nurses over there, some of the practitioners about palliative care. And I spent 2 weeks in a room with one of my colleagues, and it was just magnificent. We were sharing a bedroom, so every night we just light a little candle. There was no heater. There was no electricity. It was freezing cold. We'd lie on the bed with our what were they? Sleeping bags and chat. Goodness. And she told me, she's one of my best friends now, but quite a bit older than me, and would talk about all of her limiting beliefs, her life, and this mentor she was seeing. And I said, and by this stage, I was like, I feel not good enough. Although on paper I'm looking amazing, I'm like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And so that was a defining moment back in 2011 when I started to be mentored. As soon as I got back to Australia, rang up beautiful Rosa, who was an intuitive mentor, and helped me tap into my subconscious inner child work, which has opened up my whole world. So instead, I was asked to go to Melbourne Uni and be a lecturer. I decided that's not really what I wanted. I'm very much a people person. So, yeah, this path of business ended opening up. I have a massive love of learning and contribution, and that's where I found myself. So over time, I started to release lots of limiting beliefs, open up my heart, become vulnerable, and a business evolved because I realised I wasn't the only one out there, because I actually thought I was for a long time. And so so we really work with burnt out empathic high achievers. The empath is probably the key word. I'm different, highly sensitive, made myself so wrong about that my whole life. Why do I worry? Why do I care so much? You know, it was just really challenging. I found life horrific. Be honest, I found it really, really challenging. Had depression, had anxiety, and I was just really riddled with fear and limiting beliefs, which as I've worked through them, I feel so happy now. And probably the next part of that is we work with people, high achievers with anxiety and depression as well. So that's that business. And then during COVID, my success mentoring business doubled because everyone was like, what's the purpose of life? Am I happy? You know, what's the Who am I? I think that's the ultimate question. That's really coming through in this. Who am I? And that's a question I really keep asking myself and keeps expanding and evolving. But I had a beautiful virtual assistant from the Philippines as I scaled up my business. She helped support me, but I actually had to let her go, because whereas my business doubled, it was very overwhelming for her. She didn't have a growth mindset and she wasn't able to expand with the business. So what happened is I realized that I wasn't the only one out there. There was a lot of other coaches and mentors and business owners that had a growth mindset that needed we call them virtual angels with a growth mindset. So hence Virtual Angels by Success on Purpose was born during COVID. So the other side of that is we support beautiful business owners with a growth mindset to scale up their business through outsourcing all the back end, all the things that us visionaries are not good at. And it's very wise for us to outsource our time so we can focus on what we love to do. And really it's about spreading our mission with the world. So we work with people that have a mission. They have community. They're on a cause. It's not about anything else. It's this pull from the universe. And it's like, right, this is going, because we've all had challenges and we want to support people to, I suppose, belong again, come back to community, come back to love, come back to enjoying life. And I suppose living the best life that we can, really. That's what it's about. So, and then from that also, I'm an author. So I've wrote one book back in 2014, just finished my second book, which is called Depression, A Path to Abundance. I feel very emotional, something I'm very proud of. That's really to see depression for the empaths, for the super emotional, sensitive people as a strength, because I can tell you it's a gift because we're so sensitive, and when you release all the fear and the limiting beliefs, you have superpowers, intuitive powers like nothing else. So I really want to shift that paradigm about the belief around depression and, that there's another way out. For some people, my dad, go on, antidepressants, go down the traditional way, that's perfect. But for me, I needed to find a different way, and I did. And now it's something I'm super grateful for. And it's been, a blessing in my life, actually. Kept me going. I kept showing up when I wanted to leave. I was like, this is too much. But I kept showing up. And now, just this new beautiful path of abundance has opened up for me, which is, it comes from, as it comes from within, it shows up without as well. And so, it's about, for me, that success of knowing and loving myself.
As within, so without. I love that that saying. It's so true. Well, there's just so much in what you said, so I'm going to kind of dive back into little pieces of it. You mentioned about the empath, and as somebody as well who, gosh, I don't know if I've always been, but definitely feel like very sensitive, and I think it's easy to take on the weight of other people's emotions and things like that. How much do you think that contributed when you were working as a palliative care nurse? I could just imagine that's so incredibly difficult for somebody who's so empathetic and so sensitive when you're working, obviously with people who you would care so much about, and how difficult and how much emotional stress did that put you under, do you think?
Yeah, such a great
that was sort of leading you to that point of, when you mentioned that
I feel like it was a blessing and a curse, because it actually allowed me to be authentic as much as I could at the time to myself. Because I tried to do it like everyone else there for a while, and I'm like, just be tough, just be strong, don't get involved. And that's probably what caused me the burnout the most, really, was not honouring my emotions, how I was feeling. So, this is a long time. It was, I was a nurse for 18 years. But then I started to, I need to be myself. So sometimes I would sit there, and I would sit there with the family, and I would cry. I would have tears. And it was beautiful, because my heart was open. I'm not a robot. I tried to be a robot, didn't go very well. And so when I was my authentic, truthful self, it was beautiful, because I learned, this is the key, which my beautiful friend that I mentioned earlier, Vicky, taught me, was took me a while, but I learned how to be in compassion Because for a long time I was in sympathy. And so when you're in sympathy, it's a lower vibration, and you actually sit in the pain, which really is your own pain as well, which really burns out your battery. But as I started to become more aware and I suppose in doing the inner work, I started to come from a higher vibration where I could sit with people, but just being in a loving space of compassion. So holding a higher vibration that then they can come up to. And so that was a very defining moment for me, learning how to do that. But yeah, look, I looked after kids. I was a specialist in palliative care for children.
Yeah.
So I had some times where I was a wreck. And I remember one day in particular, this beautiful 14-year-old I was looking after in the home, went home from the Royal Children's, handover from the doctors and the nurses there, and then we took over. And I was a wreck. I was hiding in the pantry, drawing up the syringe driver, and I was sobbing. And I was just sobbing. And this was the first time I'd seen, a child like that at home, and I was just a wreck. And then I'd be like, Mel, come on, you've got this, and deep breaths, and I'd go out again, and then I'd be like,
oh my goodness.
And then I finally got myself together, and then I walked out, and there's the mother. And she comes up to me and she says, this must be so hard for you. Me? I was like, what about you? And it just showed me that just these beautiful people. And look, it was the most extraordinary, blessed experience. We ended up washing this beautiful child together. She told me so much about her life. And then things started to click in, and I'm like, wow, I have this judgment about how life should look. And then I get sad if it doesn't work out that way. But this divine child had lived more fully than people that lived to 105. And I was like, wow. And just an absolute light, touched so many lives in 14 years. And it just really, my awareness started to shift. I started to change. And to be honest, it was an absolute textbook death. Perfect. Couldn't have gone any better. But after that, I was a wreck. I was actually managing the team at the day. I was just getting through. I was going home crying, lying in the bath every night, just a wreck. And then I finally caught myself and I'm like, what's going on? What's going on here? And then I realised it was my own inner child that I was grieving for because I wasn't living my life to the fullest. I had massive dreams as a 14-year-old. And I wasn't doing that. And so I'm so thankful for all of my patience because I wouldn't be doing businesses and all this thing and public speaking and writing books and being so vulnerable and open, and if it wasn't for them. So they just helped me so much. And then I suppose the burnout was so purposeful because the trajectory had to change. I had to go off this way and be in service to my 14-year-old. That's like, I'm going to be an astronaut. And now I'm an astronaut. I live in higher realms a lot.
Yes.
So it's
wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Just to look back and see those moments of experiencing that reality, that realization that, wow, here's this 14-year-old who's really lived life, and you then recognizing that, wow, I'm not doing what I wanted to do. And then actually the sort of physiological part of the burnout, it sort of feels like when you look back at it, like all of these pieces are really leading and pushing you to be like, you're not on the right path. You're not on the right path. I'm really curious, because you said you were chasing success and you'd got all of these things and on paper it looked amazing, but you're still feeling like you still weren't enough. There still wasn't there. What led you to realize that you were in burnout and to actually make that decision to change? Because as a fellow high achiever, I know the drive to be like, there's always so much more. And you kind of see forward all the time of it could be this and this. And it's difficult to rein that in, right? Or to not be like that. I'm not sure if you ever can fully rein it in, but maybe that's sort of part of just who we are, and that's okay. But how did you realize that you're in burnout and actually realize that this was a moment to to make
oh my
a
gosh,
different
such
sort
a
of
great
shift
question.
and to stop
Wow.
chasing that?
It's not like I listened straight away, did I? Sort of,
no.
So it was just after I broke my wrist, what happened was I realized how stubborn I was and how I didn't know how to receive. And that was my biggest struggle. And it was just this sequence of events that I ended up not having any time off at all. I went because as soon as I broke my wrist, I had 2 compulsory uni shoots the next 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
I went, oh, well, I'll have to go. So, oh, well. And then I rang up my boss and said, oh, well, I may as well just come back to work. So away I went. So here's this, 6 certificates sitting there. Oh, I won't take any drugs. Oh, God, no, because I need to be alert. I need to be on, especially at uni. We were doing, we had actors come in and we were having difficult conversations. So I needed to be, super, super on for that. And so this progressed for, I can't remember exactly now, but over 3 weeks or something. And meanwhile, I'm trying to have a shower, wash my hair, everything. You just so slowed down. And then I was still trying to do a critical analysis essay, which was horrific. Like, I don't know if you've ever done one. You're pulling all these articles out, and thankfully I had this. I say thankfully all the time. I had this horrific headache for days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks. And, being a nurse, I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to have an aneurysm. So I'm off at work and I'm working in the office because I couldn't go out on the road because of my broken wrist. And then this day, the headache just got so severe. The pain was so bad that I actually broke down. And I pulled the phone in the office and I rang Mum. And I said, Ma, I was crying my eyes out. I said, Mum, I can't do this anymore. And she said, thank God. Will you come home? Will you let us help you? And I said, yes. So then I took my 2 weeks off. Then I went back home. My beautiful sister drove down from Cairns with my other arm, helped me get my assignment done. But during this time, I realised, I was like, I don't know how to receive. I was so uncomfortable. But I had to hit breaking point and just surrender because I had no option. I couldn't control. I couldn't hold on anymore. And then just another little story was then after sort of all of that, I hit sort of mid-semester and then I went overseas to Las Vegas with 30 friends. We had two 30ths over there and I was wrecked. I just got my assignment in. I just got my plaster off and I was just so exhausted. So it was beautiful. I just slept. So we traveled from San Fran to Vegas and thankfully I didn't have to drive. So I just slept in the back. I was in and out of consciousness, like awake and asleep. And then this voice came in and said, Mal, you're not very kind to yourself. And I was like, where did that come from? And I look around and everyone's like sleeping or talking in other conversations. I was like, oh my God, I'm going mad. And then I fell back asleep again. And then this voice came in again and said, Mal, you don't love yourself. And I was looking around everyone else. I'm like, oh my God. And then I realized it was my soul. My soul was talking to me. And then I was like, you're right. And so then I just started to be aware of myself. And then when I ducked Melbourne Uni, because I was the youngest in the course, I was up against doctors, like social workers, physios. Like it was just not possible. It was just like, how the hell did I do this? And then I was up there receiving the award, nervous as anything. I had to do this speech and because I was just scared of everything, lived in fear. And then it just popped in, my soul again. Said, imagine what you could do if you were kind and loving to yourself. You can achieve so much when you're hard, in force. And so that was the defining moment. And then I just went, okay, I need to learn because no one around me is doing it. I'm from the country. We're all givers. I was brought up Catholic. And I'm looking around and I'm like, it's not happening here. So, yeah, and thankfully, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And then it wasn't long later that Vicky mentioned this beautiful mentor and I started to work with her. So, and then what happened for me is I'm super scientific because of my nursing background that I learned that I needed to get into this parasympathetic nervous system, the calm, because I realised I didn't have any access to that. I just lived off adrenal stress. I had a constant sick feeling in my stomach. I just had so much anxiety. and depression. So actually I taught myself, really. I learnt all of these different ways. And so then that's what I use to support my clients. And that's the ticket to success. We have a beautiful body that's got this autonomic nervous system that when it's regulated, life's amazing. But we dysregulate it growing up. We're told this, we're told that, you got to do this, you take on all this, you know. And so what I've done now is I've learned how to regulate my autonomic nervous system, and life's amazing. Wow, imagine if we learned this when we were in school.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And so, like, just leaning into that for a moment, so what do you define as success? Like, what is success?
And that's how I show up every day. You know, things don't work out, things don't go, you know, the way you plan, but I always check in, and I choose compassion. I choose to be kind, because I was my hardest, meanest friend in the world. Like, God, you wouldn't want to be friends with me. I was horrific. But now that's like, did I respond? How did I respond? You know, so I'm always working on responding rather than reacting, and then doing okay, what's the gift? You know, and just working through that, and just being kind and gentle to self. And just, I suppose, with that belief that life works out for you, life is happening for you. And just, look, I can't tell. It's just, I struggle with life so much. Yeah. And just to be happy now, like every day, just waking up, and I don't have depression, is everything for me. So I'm just happy with not much. I wake up and I feel good. And I'm like, oh, my God, I feel good again today.
Absolutely.
This is amazing. This is amazing. So, yeah, that's it for me, is self-love.
It's amazing. And how do you think, like, obviously you've got this now, but you're running two businesses, or two arms of a business. You know, I think that there is a lot of synergy between them, because, you know, if we're looking at your history in the background, the burnout, it makes sense that you're helping someone to maybe detach from this effervescent need to succeed and to do another thing, thinking that's going to make you finally feel successful and happy, and actually help them to see what does feel good. And maybe part of that overachieving is also, you know, this need to be able to do everything yourself, and, you know, ultra capable, so you take on more than what you should, and being able to get support through outsourcing. I can really see the synergies there, you know. And I was thinking, what is it? So when you have that ability to have the self-love, and, you know, like you say, you're waking up every day, you're still then, I guess, in the world terms, being successful. You're running two businesses, and, you know, obviously you have goals and ambitions, and you're still doing that. What's changed, or what's different now than what it was before, that you would see as the biggest difference between the chasing of success and having success on paper, whereas now you actually feel the success, and yet you're still doing things? You're not sort of just floating around in life doing nothing. Like, you are achieving, and you are still being a high achiever, really, but in a different way. So I'd love to hear your take on it. Like, what is the difference
in fear? I was doing in fear, and I was having fear. So I would just attract chaos, drama, challenges. And I'm thankful for business, because it's been a massive part of my internal growth, because it's a healing on steroids. It really is. And now I'm being in love. I'm doing in love, and then I'm having love. So I'm just attracting. I'm really in my feminine. That's what it is. I'm in my feminine essence. While I looked very feminine, I was incredibly masculine. I was hard. I was doing. I was forcing. I was controlling, pushing through life. And now I'm in this feminine, receiving, allowing. I'm just so guided. And I'm purposeful about it. I have to work at it. You know, I have morning rituals. I've done all my checking in before this. I'm in alignment. As soon as I feel like I'm shifting out, I stop, meditate, come back in. Like, I do it all day. I'm so present, aware, so that I really stay in alignment, and so that I'm in service of my soul. So, you know, those intuitive hits come in. It's like, oh, yeah, great idea. okay, this is where we're going. And so I really live in the now, and I call it my genius mind. My left and right brain now are so connected that I come from that space, and it's amazing and it's challenging. Because a while ago I was like, am I doing enough? Like, I'm not really doing anything.
Yes.
Things are happening. And I'm like, God. Yes.
Yeah, and all the doubts come in
it's like
from the right brain.
It's like, I couldn't see how things could happen. It's
yes.
Like, how on earth? I would never have been able to, you know, orchestrate that in my ego control mind. And so it's thankfully, look, all the burnout is so purposeful. I burn out just before I went overseas early this year. I had some challenges in my business and I was wrecked, but it was so good because Mother Mary came in and I just said, here you go, I'm done. Just gave it up to her, and that's how I live now. I just surrender every day, surrender up everything. And my God, you feel so light because you're not trying to hold on and control and, you know, force through life. So that's the difference is letting go. Just I'm a puppet here. I'm here. I feel I'm a channel of grace to serve the world, and I'm actually allowing that to happen. But God, it's been a bumpy ride to get there.
Now, I've got a question for those intuitive souls and, you know, some of us that are into a bit of the woo as well, because it's something I've wondered before, and I have asked this question before. I'm not sure if I've really figured out the answer yet. And so I'm interested to hear your take on it. When you have intuition that comes in or ideas that come in, how do you tell the difference between true intuition and your soul guiding you to the you know, an idea or a path that you should go down versus what if it is that other part of your brain that's come up with this as a logical idea that is really trying to keep you safe and divert you from your path? How do you tell the difference between the true intuition and the crazy ideas? Because I think as an entrepreneur, you would know this as well, but you know, there's ideas are abundant. They're all the time, every time, all day, every day, every week. There's so many. You can't physically go and act on them all. And so, you know, when you're saying you're in tune, you're aligned, you know, you're really listening to that intuition and taking the action that is aligned, how do you know which is the one that is
brilliant.
aligned, or
this.
if it's a sneaky part of your ego?
This is another beautiful definition of success, because it's knowing thyself. So there's two answers to this. Because now I know my soul so well. I'll call her she, is so quiet, so gentle. And it's like this voice that comes from out somewhere and it comes in, and it's like, and it's just so gentle and quiet. And then I feel my heart opens and I have tears. I feel the love of it. And so that's my soul. But also, which is my soul in a way, is my ego. So then there's the part that I have to really tap into, is my ego that wants to sabotage what my soul wants. And so I feel resistance. So then from that space, I have a yes and a no. So I know a flat out no for myself, where my soul's like, I have actually an energy that sits there that says no, it keeps me in alignment. But the other part for me is when I feel that uncomfortableness, and it's my ego's like, no, we're not doing that. and this is what I say, I see what you're doing. And so then I'll take action straight away, because I know that that's my sabotage. That's when I want to stay, you know, out of alignment. And so then that's why there's so much success in getting out of our comfort zone. And so I'm so in tune now. I know all those energies. So then when that comes in, I'm like, okay, this is happening. You know, you can kick and scream all you like. And so then I'll just line up. I'm very big on habits and things. So taking action and just working through that, you know, and then you get there and you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that. It was hell. It was awful. It was painful. Like I had to be vulnerable or whatever happened, but oh my God, I'm so proud of myself. And, you know, and then that opens up more of the heart. And then Yeah, I think you see more of yourself. You didn't know you could do that. So this is the journey. You know yourself.
Yes, and like that makes so much sense. And I was just thinking, it's probably just the practice and of when you have those moments of the ideas, and maybe you're torn between two different ideas. You're like, I don't know which one is the one that I really should be leaning into. And the longer that you stay in that middle zone, you're really going nowhere. You're kind of stuck on the fence, right? And, just hearing you talk there, and I was like, that is the time where you need to actually stop trying to force it or think it through, because that is going to help your ego to give you all of the reasons why the one that they want to do. And I think it's that moment where you really need to go and sit in silence for a minute and just have no judgment on either, and just sit there and think about, what one do I feel like really the most excited about? And I love the difference that you said. One feels light and calm, and the other one feels like there's resistance to it. So it may make sense, maybe logically, maybe there's all sorts of reasons why it might be good. But if it's feeling any sort of hard, or there's resistance to it, then maybe that isn't the one that you're meant to be doing. And and I think that there's always layers to this, right? Because then you're like, maybe the resistance is that it's going to require you to step outside the comfort zone. So you're going to need to like check in, like, what is the resistance, or what is the heaviness? Is it that it's feeling heavy because it may be new and that could be scary, but it may still be the aligned one? Or is there resistance because it's actually like, oh no, that's just like a rock on your back? So I love that. I'm like, that's a really great way to have that moment to check in with yourself and really feel what is the intuition and where is that leading me to. So thank you for sharing. I think that's a good reminder to actually, I think for high achievers, I'm talking about myself here. Really great reminder to actually just take that moment to go and sit in silence and allow yourself the time to really feel the way, what is the right way to go. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I wanted to ask, when somebody is chasing success and they're in that place that you were before, what happens if they remain in it, if they just keep on going? Like, what does that path look like if you don't have that stop and change, and maybe they don't have that experience of the breakdown, or maybe they do. Sorry, not you didn't call it a breakdown, you called it a burnout. They have an experience of burnout, but then they kind of like muddle through it, and maybe it just didn't get to the point of being so chronic that they couldn't operate anymore. So I've heard of people call it, it's almost like constant burnout. They're just in this prolonged state of burnout. Like, what happens? What is if you are continuing to stay in there, and if someone's maybe thinking, oh gosh, I feel like I've been in burnout for ages.
Yeah, beautiful. This leads into my why I get up every day, why I do what I do, is to cure and prevent dis-ease. Because if you don't, that is the end outcome. Dis-ease. So the adrenals, the cortisol, the inflammatory response. Like, we've got so many fancy words out there now, and I just look and I go, it's all stress. But it's internal stress more than, yes, there's the external stress, but it's the internal stress we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how this happened. I was at the Royal Melbourne, and I was on night duty, and I used to work in high acute hematology, bone marrow transplant units, and one of the patients was up in the middle of the night, and I was just making her a cup of tea, and we're just having a chat. They're all young. They're not old by any means. That's the thing. And she was just telling me, she said, Mel, I know when I got cancer, because they all had like leukemias and things like that. And she's telling me, I'm this young, just out of graduate, and she's saying it was this time in my life and it was work and I was stressed and blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, and the signs were there. And she's like, I look back now and the signs were there. And I'm just sort of flabbergasted, because I'm sort of taught that, it's all of these other things, that you get cancer and la, la, la. And then, because I had such anxiety, which was a gift for me, because I was a very good listener. I never liked to talk about myself. So I loved listening to people and listening to their stories. And I heard this time and time again. And, oh, Mel, I know that all the signs were there. I wasn't listening, and this stress, all these periods in my life. And I was just like, oh my God. And then I realized that if I didn't start to change myself, then I was on this trajectory, 100 million percent. I really feel like I would have got breast cancer, because breast cancer is about nurturing, and I wasn't nurturing self. Yeah. And I know the energy of people. Like I hear it all the time, and they say, oh, such and such, especially nurses, just got cancer. And I'm like, oh, I know, like I could feel that energy. Like, it's like, yes. And so, yeah, this is what happens. I just saw it all the time, and I just saw, so many beautiful couples, and they'd get to retirement and they'd be so excited, and they've got the caravan and the big, beautiful truck, and, they're off there going. And then, one of the partners just falls over a little bit, just there's nothing major. And, I better go to the doctor, full blood screen. Next thing they find out they got cancer. Then one of them dies, and then all their plans done. And I just saw this over and over again. And I'm like, we are doing life upside down. Like, what? So I was just like, this is years and years, and I'm just observing, going, what are we doing? What am I doing? Like, what is this life that we just work so hard? For what? For when? For when?
Yeah. Exactly. And you're doing all that work and all that stress to get to the life that you think you want. And then by the time you get there, you've actually burnt your body and everything out so much that, maybe you have some form of illness or, even worse, cancer. I actually don't doubt it at all. It's not from something external. I think that often it's created within, right? And because otherwise it makes no sense. Otherwise it's like, well, if you did exactly the same thing as someone else, the same experiences, then surely you'd both have the same outcome. But it doesn't work like that, does it? It doesn't happen that way. And, not saying that there's no external factors, of course there are, but there's no hard and fast rule that you'd find with people, are you? And like, I love that you've noticed that pattern where they all were like, I didn't pay attention to the signs. Like, the signs are all there now that I look back. I think that's, it's such a really important moment to just, take that in and think, well, and I think it also has a big impact with me because that's, I align my life so much. For me, it wasn't like getting cancer or anything, thank goodness. But, that moment of, maybe we were talking about this when we chatted last, but when I became a mum and, the first baby, and I was geriatric. I was 35 when I had my son. And so, all the doctors are telling me I'm geriatric, and I was horrified. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm young. And like, I felt like I was still 25. But it was, at that time, I was, in a high-powered job. I was head of marketing. I was, had this corporate career in front of me, and, I was really going gung-ho straight into that and thinking, the sky's the limit. I'm keeping on going, and I'm having a baby, but that's not going to change my career at all. I was really determined that it wouldn't change anything, even though I got told by my boss, he said, oh, your priorities will change, and don't worry, we'll find a job for you when you get back. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. I'm like, what do you mean? My job is my job, and I haven't worked my butt off to get here to not come back to it. So thank you very much. So I went off on maternity leave with that baby, and I was checking in my work emails. I was up at night breastfeeding, like looking at stuff that's going on in the business and checking in with my team. And I don't even know, they didn't bring in anyone initially to replace me that much. And then they realized that they needed to. Anyway, it was a bit diabolical. But I went back to work, put him in daycare way before I really wanted to, wasn't sitting up properly, and it was heart-wrenching. But I was like, I'm back. Yes, I'm doing what I said I would, and here I am, and I'm back to work. And I put in all the effort. They were starting to treat me like, well, no, you've got other things going on and a baby, and were, they were putting me in a box of someone who wasn't committed to my job. And I was like, I am 100% committed. I'm going to show you. So I was leading this crazy life of like, drop them off at daycare, jump on the train, get into the city, work, don't have lunch breaks so that you can leave by 4 so you can get back on the train and get to daycare to pick him up and get home and have dinner and put him to bed. Yeah, I was like, this is mental. But I did it for probably 2 years, a good year before I started going, what am I doing with my life? Like, this sucks. I am stressed out. I'm burning myself to the ground. For what? For these shareholders of this company that like don't even care one bit about me. Like, I'm working, and I was trying to prove to them that I could do it, that I was a superhuman. I'm like, I'm missing out on all these moments with my son. Like, I hired a nanny so that I could have a work from home day and he didn't have to go to daycare. So I was sort of there, but she was looking after him, and she was coming back from the park with all these beautiful photos of him on the playground. And I had that moment, and I said to my husband, I'm like, I could do so much more. They're not even allowing me to at work because they think I'm some mum with a baby and that they shouldn't be pressuring me. And I was like, I can do so much more. It is almost insulting, what's going on. But I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to live by those rules. And what is this life that I think I'm trying to get to? Why aren't I even just living it now? Something could happen tomorrow, And that was that moment for me where, I think it was just a culmination of all of this whole experience in life that I was in, realizing I am not one bit happy. I've got, like you say, it's all on paper. I've got the degree. I've got I'm head of marketing, which is what I'd always wanted to be. I've got the job. I've got 2 properties, blah, 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 everything, the husband, the car, whatever. And I was like, this isn't living. Like, I want to be traveling. I don't want to ask for annual leave. I want to be able to go to the beach when I want. I want to be able to exercise and look after myself. And obviously you put yourself last after everything, right? You're working for someone else and you've got kids, and that was the moment, and I think I'm glad that it didn't get to the point of it being cancer. And I can really, just feel so compassionate for people that it does get to that point. But there is a point at which you think, why are you not living the life that you want to live now? And that, to me, that was actually that moment where that's when I started this business. I was like, no, I'm maternity leave with child number 2. And I am not going back to that. And I'm not going to make that same mistake again. And, I did it for them. I did it for me. And then I was like, I want other people to think there is a way to have a business and to actually be having the life that you want now while you're building your success. Like, you actually are more successful than what you think already. Even, and it can always be more. But why are you like putting life on hold and all the things that you enjoy on hold, just so you can have some success in the future? It's like, no, now, today, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So if you're not enjoying it every day, then what are we doing? And so I love that you approach it from that success point of view, and tuning into yourself and your soul, and then I've come at it from let's design the business strategy that actually gives you the lifestyle now that you want to be living, so that and I know that the business isn't successful on day one. Everybody knows that. But it's like, but start building that business now. Like, don't build a business that's actually taking you further away from that's taking up more of your time. Like, do it now so that you're enjoying that life while you're doing it. Anyway, that's enough about me. I wanted to ask you.
Soul.
So when you got to that,
something beautiful for the listeners to do, and this is what I do quite regularly. I don't know, quarterly. Write your eulogy. What are they saying about you? And
oh my goodness,
that just defines like what's important, because as you beautifully said earlier, like, it's about stopping what feels right, not the thinking mind. And I find that just really brings you on path, because then a lot of stuff just goes and it's like, I don't need that. Yeah. And what do you remember for? For me, I want to be remembered.
Yeah, all the stuff I was worried about.
I really, I've lived life. I live every day like it's my last. And That's the goal. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in. It's just a little great for business owners. I think they probably get it more than the high achievers will love it, because yeah, it's just a really beautiful reflective process. What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah. I love that, because it actually puts in perspective, you can't take any of your stuff with you, so who are you being today? Because that's what people are going to remember, is who you were, not the things that you had. They're not going to go, wow, she had a really great house, or she had whatever. They're going to be there. You are going to be remembered for who you are, and, the impact that you make with other people. Maybe it may be as simple as a smile that brightens someone's day, right? Or it could be just a random thought or something that you shared with them that actually just gave them a perspective or changed something for them that sent them off down a whole new path. And, sometimes it's the smallest things, but I think that who you're being is who you're going to be remembered for. So I love the fact, write your eulogy. What is it that you want to be remembered for? And then how can you start living into that now? I love that. And this is kind of related, because the question I was going to ask was, when you have got to that point, you're realizing, right, okay, enough's enough. I'm off the crazy train. I'm going to jump off it. I'm not on the treadmill anymore, doing life the way that, that we've been told, and I'm going to do what is going to be more in tune with myself. When you're a high achiever, you've got all these things happening, what are some of the easiest ways or the first steps that you can take to really make that shift and to rein back from this incessant need to have more and do more? And maybe the first step is writing the eulogy, so I love that. But what else could someone do today that, if they're feeling like, oh my goodness, I feel like we've just been talking about me, I do all those things, I'm on the train of crazy life trying to achieve something.
I feel like the best thing is to share what worked for me.
What's the first step? How do we get off the
train? And that was a daily practice of 5 minutes of deep breathing. And this sort of just came through. I started to understand science. I'm like, I'm not accessing this parasympathetic nervous system. And because, people would say, oh, no, just calm down, or just don't worry, or just, and you can't, because you physiologically, your body's wired, and it could make you more stressed. So it was just really,
and then you're trying to calm down.
Right. So I knew I had to do an action that was useful. Like, what's the most powerful thing our body has? So what happens if I think I know my high achievers, they love the science, because why, Mel? Tell me, because otherwise it's a bit of fluff and, take some deep breaths. Like, well, that's ridiculous. That's not going to work. So this is what I came to learn, is when you take a deep breath, you stretch the vagus nerve down in the bottom of your stomach, which opens up a receptor pathway up through your heart and up into your midbrain, which is your limbic emotional system, where is the sort of the seat of the autonomic nervous system, stressed or relaxed. So what you're doing, and the key is a longer out breath. And I always say, do it, and do it badly. Because it's horrific. Because when you get to that place, and my practice is I always work and teach in 30-day cycles, because you have to build new pathways. You can't work with the old pathways that are in the brain.
Yeah.
And when you're building new pathways, it's uncomfortable because they're not there. And so you're sort of hitting through for a while, and then the sabotage comes in. But you just, you sit for 5 minutes each day, just nothing fancy, no in and out for or whatever, but just a bit of a longer exhale. And you do that every day for 30 days, and then you're rewiring, creating new pathways, new circuits to start to access this relaxation zone. And for me, it was just the most magnificent thing in my life, where for 2 hours after I did that, of the 30 days, I had no anxiety. And no anxiety for me for 2 hours was massive, because ever since I was a kid, I always remember having sick feeling in my stomach every day, all day. And then I didn't have it for 2 hours, and I was like, this works.
Yeah. Wow.
So, we are the magic pill, and our beautiful body has everything created.
Wow.
It wants us to have an easy
And breath as well. Like people think that's got to be too easy. Like I'm doing it all day long anyway. It's like so simple, so easy, and so accessible that we're overlooking it and looking for something more complicated, or looking for something that's more like, oh, it must be more than that. I must need whatever it is. I just love that. Yes. How easy. Yeah. So do some deep breathing, write your eulogy. And see the new path. That's amazing. So good. Yes, and we've hardly even touched on, I think, the importance of not trying to do everything yourself, and you did mention about receiving, and I think that's probably a whole nother conversation, but I do think that's another question we could ask ourselves is, what can you get rid of? Like, what are we doing that we actually don't need to be doing? Whether that's in business, whether it's in life, whether it's like, hey, you know what? My kids could empty the dishwasher or whatever, having a little process where maybe you can go through and discover what things you could delegate or delete completely from your existence that are not necessary would be wonderful. But Mel, I'm conscious of time, and we've had a really great discussion, so maybe we'll bring that whole one about delegation, have a whole topic on that another day. You mentioned that you have some, an offer for the listeners of the podcast just before we jumped on live.
Yes, so I was referring to the Virtual Angels business.
That. Do you want to share a bit about that?
So for any beautiful business owners there that mention the podcast, we're happy to give a free Virtual Angels on Purpose session. We have a coaching program for our Virtual Angels. They're high achievers too, so they need their groups, they need accountability. They do all their beautiful morning rituals and routines as well, so they're accessing their parasympathetic nervous system. So and also would love to give 10% off our service. So yeah, if they mention this podcast, to be an honour. Yes.
Awesome. Yes. And so that's a service to connect you with a virtual assistant of your own. Amazing. That is so kind and very generous of you. I thank you so much for that. And so how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we're all over social media.
They just want to follow along.
I'm never on there, but my beautiful Virtual Angels are. It's not my genius zone I'm not into technology, being there every day, but they are. So we're on Facebook. If you look at Melonie Taylor with an O, Melonie is a little bit different. Instagram, LinkedIn, or my email is melonie@successonpurpose.com.au. So, yeah, always happy here. Any questions, we love to share. Yeah, just to make everyone's lives easier and help everyone get their mission out there. That's what we do. Yeah, sharing life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. It's so incredible, and just so many people's lives that you're really changing and, significantly. So I love the impact that you're making with your business and helping people. All of us high achievers that need to just love themselves a little bit and know that you're already successful, you're already enough. That's amazing. So I appreciate that so much. We'll make sure all of those links, so if you want to get in touch with Mel and her team, they are in the show notes. You can scroll down and find her on social media or her website there. And don't forget, if you are thinking you need to delegate something from your business, then she has that amazing offer for you if you get in touch with her, and she can help you find the right virtual assistant for you. So thank you. I think that is just incredible, and I appreciate your time with us today. Mel, do you have anything final that you wanted to leave the audience with before we never give up. Sign off?
And yeah, because when you just spend more time loving yourself, that's when the universe really responds. Because the universe is that lighter vibration, and we remember that we are that. And then we just have this beautiful flow that happens. And so, but you have to just keep going, never give up, because for me, the programming was life has to be hard. So I had to keep going to undo that programming to allow this new vibration.
Yeah.
But it's there for all of us. I'm not special. I just thankfully had a lot of burnouts.
Yeah.
and kept moving, and it's there for all of us. So just keep going.
Love it. And in the best way as well, as in keep going. You will learn to open up that intuition and be able to, be in that place of, you called it light and free, like feeling really good about it rather than it all being heavy and pressure. Because I think, that's something we all do, don't we? As high achievers, we all keep going and push ourselves, but it can be a light way instead of the heavy way. And that's what I think you've explained so beautifully today. Amazing. Thank you so much, Mel. I appreciate your time, and it's been really fun discussion. So we'll talk again soon.